All right, so in this video today, I'm just going to talk about what I think the best first gun for somebody to own should be. Now, it's going to be impossible to speak in absolutes here today because there's so many different people and they need guns for so many different reasons and just different skill levels and all that kind of stuff. So there's no way to speak in absolutes. I'm just going to give a generic idea of here what I think. So I'm just going to throw this out as quickly and as easily as possible. So I see some people sometimes talking about having a 12 gauge shotgun as their first gun. And of course, you know, it's been recommended by politicians. That's all you need is a double barrel shotgun, and I disagree with that. The 12 gauge shotgun is definitely a good home defense gun, and it is an absolute showstopper, but it is pretty intimidating. If you've never shot one and you put a round in there the first time you pull that trigger, it's got some bark to it. It's going to kick a little bit. And generally they're pretty big. I've got a shorter 12 gauge that's basically for the purpose of home defense. But they're so big and they're kind of hard to load, especially for a person who's new to guns. It's kind of intimidating, and I just don't think it's the best first gun to own. And basically, I'm including all shotguns in this. Both of these guns right here are 12 gauge. They shoot a shell that's this size. Another very popular shotgun is a 20 gauge, which is this right here, which is kind of backwards. The smaller the number is on the gauges, the bigger the shell it uses. So this is a 12 gauge, this is a 20 gauge, and there's also a very popular shotgun called the 410, and it's even a lot smaller than that. But just in general, I don't think shotguns are the best first gun to own. And again, it's hard to speak in absolutes. It may be right for some people, but in general, I don't think it's the best first gun to own. Okay, somebody else might consider an AR-15 as a good first gun, and I just don't think so. It's basically the same reason not for a 12 gauge shotgun. When you go to pull the trigger on this, it's going to bark. It's not near as bad as a 12 gauge. I'm not saying that. But you're going to have some serious firepower, and you are unleashing some real wrath with this thing, with those bullets screaming out of there like they do on this thing. And again, this may be right for some people as a first gun, but in general, I don't think an AR-15 is going to be the best thing. For the size and just all the stuff that's associated with those other two, I just don't think those are the best first ones. So then people go to the other side of that, and they say, oh, well, let me look for the smallest gun that I can find. And like this Ruger LCP2 right here, this is a very, very tiny little gun. You can see it fits within the palm of my hand here. And people think, oh, well, I'll get the smallest one I can. And that is a problem also. I think that's a mistake also. The reason for it is, especially like on this Ruger LCP2, it doesn't shoot a very big bullet at all. It doesn't use a very big cartridge. But it's still big enough that with it being this small, there's just not much to grab onto. Whenever you shoot, it just recoils so hard it wants to flip up out of your hand, and it's really hard to hold on to. And a lot of smaller guns like this are definitely like that. And so I think going to the smallest end of it is not the right place either. I just don't think this is the best first gun. This may be right for some people as their first gun. In general, I don't think so. This may be something good for you. You have to learn how to really manage recoil. And recoil is like what happens when you pull the trigger and whenever it flips back like that. Whenever you learn how to manage recoil, this may be a better gun to own. But in general, I don't think it's the best first one. I personally think getting a handgun that's just kind of mid-size like this, you can see how this one's a lot bigger than this little Ruger LCP2 I was telling you about. I think a handgun in this size is generally going to be your best bet. Now this is a handgun that shoots 22 LR, and it shoots bullets that are this size right here. Which the bullet is actually the gray part here. The case is the brass colored part here. The gray part is the part that actually leaves out of the gun. The brass part right here is the one that basically stays inside the gun or gets kicked out to the side. This goes down the barrel and the brass part gets kicked out to the side, but the actual bullet is the gray part here. So this one shoots a 22, which most people are going to recommend that's going to be a good handgun to start off with, is a 22, because whenever you shoot this, the recoil, and again, the recoil is what happens is it like flipping back whenever you pull the trigger and you're trying to maintain that explosion happening. On this 22, it's going to be pretty minimal. And most people, even though they may be scared of guns, when they first pull the trigger on this, they realize, oh, it's not as bad as what I thought whenever they're shooting something like this. And it's good a lot of times to start off with that, because then it it kind of breaks you in and kind of gets you used to that idea of okay, I'm maintaining an explosion every time I pull that trigger, and you just kind of get used to it and realize, oh, it's really not that bad. So that may be a good first gun to get, although most people are going to recommend that 22 is probably not the best for self-defense or for home defense. It can work fine, but most people are going to recommend that it's probably not the best. I've got a whole video talking about whether the 22 is good or not for self-defense. So then really that kind of gets into this idea of having a bigger gun like this that shoots 9mm. That's probably the best bet. Okay, so on this one, you can see right here, it tells you, every barrel will tell you what bullet it shoots, what cartridge it uses. You can see right here it uses 9mm, and it uses this one right here. And you can compare that to this 22 LR, and you can see how much bigger that is than this. So on this one, whenever you pull the trigger, it's definitely going to recoil more, and you're going to have to just hang on, and there's all kinds of stuff to be said about all of this, but it is going to take more effort to hold that thing down whenever it recoils. It's going to kick back more, but it's not, on a 9mm, it's not like it's insane amount of recoil. It's not like it's going to flip you, on your back or anything like that, but it is going to kick a lot harder than this 22. But this probably is the best bet for the first gun that you get. So, it's really all a matter of money and budget and everything, because ideally you would buy a 22 like this and you would shoot a 22 for a little bit, and then you would upgrade to get this 9mm. And your budget just may not allow for that. And so if your budget doesn't allow for that, you may want to just go ahead and get to the 9mm and get to what would be really a really good solution for just home defense. And of course, within a 22 handgun, there's all kinds of good 22 handguns that you could get. There's this Ruger SR22 is a very good option. There's a Browning Buckmark, that's a good option. The Smith & Wesson Victory is a good option. The Taurus TX22 is a very good option as a starter pistol on that. Okay, on the 9mm, this is a good starter option, is a Smith & Wesson SD9VE. And if you go into your gun shop or whatever to decide what to get, there'll be people there, they know what they're talking about, and they'll be able to recommend good 9mm handguns. But this is definitely a good one here, this Smith & Wesson SD9VE. It's not perfect, but it's good. Now you could also have the mentality of buy once and cry once, and just go ahead and step up into a better 9mm and just get what you need to start off with. And another reason that it may be better to start off with the 9mm is that in a 22 LR handgun that shoots this, sometimes this, for these particular cartridges, these rounds just cause problems with firing, and sometimes you'll get jams and you'll get it to where it doesn't go off and all that. And it may be a frustrating experience for your first gun to have one that has issues sometimes. Whereas most of the time with most 9mm, and again, I'm not speaking to absolutes, but most of the time in a 9mm, this round, just the way it's designed, just works better just generally than that. And you're not going to have near as many failures, and you won't have the frustration that you might have in shooting a 22 LR handgun. Also, if you are buying your first handgun, definitely don't just buy it and then just go start shooting it. You need to have training somewhere. You need to have somebody who can help you. Take classes, ask people at the gun range questions. Don't just go shooting, and learn the rules of gun safety. When you're holding a gun, keep your finger off of the trigger. Always have it pointed in a safe direction. Even if you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that there's not a round in the chamber. If you know there's not a round in there, like what is happening right there. Even if you know it's like this, where there's nothing in there, you still never point that gun at anybody. You just don't do it. Keep your finger off of the trigger. And when you are shooting, make sure you know what is beyond what you're shooting at. And don't just go out in the country and just start winging shots off, because you're gonna potentially hurt somebody by doing that. Know where your bullet is going to go. You're responsible for every bullet that leaves the barrel of your gun. And always treat every gun as if it were loaded. Even if you know it's unloaded, treat it as if it is loaded.